guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a recommendations video for the Goodreads group monthly recommendations. I will leave a link down below so you can go and check out what everybody else recommends. But the theme for March is standalones, which I was pretty excited about because that's starting to be a rare thing nowadays. Everything always gets a sequel, or a prequel, or a companion novel, or a whole series. It's very rare to have a standalone. So without further ado, let's get into my recommendations. Now I'm going to start with 3 books for middle grade, then I'm going to do 3 for YA, and 3 for adult. I'm going to try and at least follow somewhat of a pattern each month. So these are the books that I have in mind for middle grade. The first book that came to mind is Briar Rose by Jane Yolen. This is a book that I have not heard many people talk about, but I read this when I was in middle school. I was probably like 12 maybe when I read this, and this was one of the first books that I read that really opened up my world of books. It was just out of my comfort zone, and it was kind of a weird pick for me at that point in my life. But this is essentially a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but it takes place during the Holocaust, so you kind of can see the parallels between the issues there, and it is just done so beautifully. Jane Yolen is a very famous kind of children's author, middle grade author. She's been around for a while. I highly recommend this book, and also retellings are really big right now, and I feel like this is one that came out a long time ago and really needs to be read and brought back into the daylight. The next book that I want to recommend for middle grade, I don't know if it's necessarily middle grade, but I read it when I was middle grade age, and that is The Scribbler of Dreams by Mary E. Pearson, who is a really big author nowadays in YA, but she's been around for a while, guys. She existed prior to her current books. But this is a really great kind of juvenile version of Romeo and Juliet set in modern day, and it was just very touching. I just remember really loving it when I was a younger teen, and it's just done so well, and I highly recommend this book. The same thing goes for this next book that I have. I'm not sure if it necessarily falls into middle grade, but I read it at that age, and I feel like it's a very good book to read when you're in that really young, impressionable age, and to segue you into YA books. But that is It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. This book holds a lot of meaning for me. I read this book at a very important point in my life where I was dealing with people who had similar issues. Again, this book has been around for a while. I kind of delve back into my middle grade days when I think of middle grade books. But this is a very realistic and a very eye-opening read from the perspective of a boy who tries to commit suicide and then gets admitted into a psychiatric ward and goes through the whole healing process. And it's a very raw and real look into mental illness, and it was one of the first books on the market that I remember coming out for people my age at that point in time. But I love this book. It's been turned into a movie. It's one of the very first really good movie adaptations that I feel like stuck really true to the book, so I highly recommend this book if you're looking for a really good standalone heavy read. Moving into YA, this was the slim pickings for standalones because there are not that many standalones that come out in YA anymore, but these are the 3 that I came up with. The first one is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first book by Maggie Stiefvater that really got me into her writing. I read her Shiver trilogy, and that didn't quite convince me. I was kind of growing out of that paranormal romance stage. Then I picked this up because there's a horse on it, and, you know, horses and me kind of go hand in hand. This book is just phenomenal. It's a really unique story about this island town that holds a race every year where all the younger guys in the town race across the island on these like crazy steeds that come out of the ocean. It's out there, but it is such a wild and entertaining read. I highly recommend this if you're looking for a very fast-paced standalone book that does not leave you guessing or wanting more. It's just a really good, complete, unique story. The next book that I want to recommend may be a little bit controversial, but it has stuck in my head since I read it when it came out, and that is Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma. This book has stuck with me since the day that I read it. This book may not be for everybody, it's extremely taboo, but I just remember being awestruck by this book. This book is a love story that takes place between a brother and a sister. And that is a very obviously incestual and controversial relationship, but this book is one of the first books that I remember reading in YA that handles teenage romance and teenage version of love in the most respectful way and the most realistic way. It was just flawlessly done for a really, really messed up, hard topic, and I highly, highly recommend anybody who is remotely interested in this book to pick it up and read it. The writing is phenomenal, and it leaves you questioning a lot about life, how you view relationships, how you view family, how you view romance. It's so, so good. And the last book that I have to recommend for YA is the very first book that I thought of as far as standalones, and I will forever recommend this book, and it is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. This is his debut novel that came out last year, and I have been singing this book's praises since it came out. This book just hit me right in the feels, and it is just so good. This book deals a lot with coming of age and coming to terms with your own sexuality, whether you accept yourself or not, and whether other people accept you. This book is kind of reminiscent of the movie The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It has a very similar memory concept as that movie, if you've seen that. But it has to do with homosexuality and growing up and a really kind of rough childhood. And it is so good. This book broke me. I have not cried like I cried at this book. This book is just so, so good, and I will read anything that Adam Silvera comes out after reading this book. And moving into adult, the first book that comes to mind is a book that I'm currently reading, so I don't know if this technically counts as a recommendation, but I'm already going to recommend it. And that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I'm about halfway through this book right now, and it is just so dang good. This is an adult fantasy novel, and I'm starting to get more into fantasy right now, and it's about a town in a valley that has a tower off in the distance that has a wizard called the Dragon, and every 10 years he comes into the town and takes a girl of 17 years old into the tower for 10 years, and you don't see her again. And that's pretty much all I knew going into it. That's all I really wanted to know going into it, and this book is just turning out to be such an amazing ride. I love the writing. Everything about this book is so good. I feel like I'm going to say that for every book that I recommend because that's why I'm recommending it. The next adult book that I want to bring up is Ready Player One. I feel like a lot of people are going to recommend this book because this is a very, very well-loved book, but I will recommend it again. If you have not read this book and you are any sort of a nerd or pop culture trivia reference person, this book is for you. It just has everything 80s arcade and Atari and video game related. It's just so good. Everything about this book is good. So just read this. Read anything by Ernest Cline because he's amazing and super nerdy. And the last book that I want to recommend in the adult section is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is also another highly praised book. This is the arc of this because I do not have a finished copy of it, which I now realize I need to pick up. But this book is just so magical and whimsical. I remember loving every second of this book. This book is one of those books where you don't want to rush through it. You just want to sit there and absorb the writing and just be in the atmosphere that she creates. This is about a traveling circus that just kind of shows up in a town overnight and is only there for a couple days, and everything in it changes and is very mysterious and amazing and beautiful. Everything in this book is so good. If you haven't picked this book up, do it. Just do yourself a favor. You're gonna love the experience. It's just so atmospheric and great. Just everything's great. Everything is amazing in this video. So that's all I have for recommendations. If any of you have read these books, leave your thoughts on them in the comments down below, or if you have any recommendations for me. I'm always looking for standalones because they're a rare breed right now. So that's gonna be it. I hope you guys have an amazing night, and I hope you guys are reading some amazing books, and I will see you guys next time.